Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. Today I have with me Lorenzo Araujo, or Coach Zoe, from Kansas, and he is the owner of Distal Point, and Distal Point Tumbling. Is it just Distal Point?
Disappoint
Um,
tumbling.
Distal Point Tumbling. And we're going to talk about tumbling and gymnastics and all the fun stuff today. Welcome to the show, Coach Zoe. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate being here. I love it. I'm excited.
How did you start your journey in tumbling and then because I know you do gymnastics and cheerleading as well. So tell us how you got into this.
Well, I started off in college, my sophomore year. I actually played football in college. So I was done with my football season and I was extremely bored. And if you've ever done football in college, you know, you wake up, go to film, go to class, go to film, go to practice, go to film, go to sleep, repeat, right? And so when the football season was over, I really had nothing to do. So I did what every football player does when they are bored. I went to go lift. On my way to the weight room, one of my friends from high school, Nicolette, asked me to spot a stunt. She was at cheer practice, and I was like, I have no idea what that is, right? Like, what are you talking about? She's like, oh, it's easy. Just make sure this girl doesn't die. It's like, no problem. Simple enough, right? Like, um, then they were like, oh, you're doing pretty good. You should try this stunt. So we put up a prep. They taught me how to cradle. And they said, no, you're doing so good. Like, why don't you try a lib? And again, told them I have no idea what these words mean. And so Kashmir, the flyer, she's like, it's easy. You just do a pizza delivery grip. Okay, you're gonna have your right hand on my ankle like you're holding a soda pop, and you're gonna have your left hand on my butt like you're holding a pizza box. At this point, so I grew up in New York City. It was 2008 when I was in college. So I was only 5 years from being in New York City, but I knew what a setup sounded like. And I was like, she's trying to get me to go to jail. I'm not doing that, right? So I had my hands on her lower back and her ankle. And the coach was like, no, 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 it needs to be on her butt. So I put my hands on like her upper thigh, you know what I'm saying? Upper hamstring. And coach was like, no, grab her butt. Kashmir literally took my hand, put it on her butt, and said, right here. I looked at her, I looked at the coach. Coach said, go. I never left. I never left, right? Like that's all you need to tell me is what we do every day. I'll be back. Um, so that first semester, I was clueless about cheerleading. I just like being able to spend my free time with the girls, right? The next year, I got a little more serious. So that was my junior year, and there were a lot of promises being made about having us compete, which never ended up happening. The school just kind of stiffed us on that, but whatever. It's the end of my junior year, and the team wants me to try out as a captain, and I get a captain position, and that's kind of crazy because that's the first time I ever saw myself as a leader. Like up until that point, I always thought of myself as like a great number two, right? Like I could think very well, I could plan, I had great ideas, but no one really liked to rally around me. Like I didn't move the masses. So starting my senior year, we're at camp, and we have a younger coach. They have like this party, dance party, and she's a little inappropriate with one of the staffers. Now I knew as a team, like we had dreams of competing this season. So I huddled everyone up at the end of the night and I told them, listen, if we have to get a new coach, that makes the likelihood of us competing very small, like tiny. She's not perfect, but she wants us to compete. So we all decided to drop it and never speak of it again, right? We spent that entire year focused, hyper focused, and intentional on getting to competition, whatever it took. So, we're selling t-shirts, we're at community events, we're doing all the fundraisers, whatever needed to be done to get to nationals. That's what we did. Like we didn't care about whatever our coach had going on is not our business. So we got the funding to go to nationals, and our coach actually came through. Like she got us a choreographer, and he was really talented. So not only were we going to compete, but now we were going to compete at a high level, right? Like we didn't just have this ranky dink routine put together. So we put blood, sweat, tears into that routine. Like first of all, our head coach was a dance coach. In college, a lot of times it's cheer and dance. They don't know that it's two separate sports, right? So she specialized in dance, but if she wanted a full-time position, she had to do dance and cheer. So she didn't know anything about the cheer routine. We didn't know anything about score sheets. We didn't know nothing. We knew nothing. Only thing we knew is this was our only chance, especially for me. I was a senior. So when you have a dance coach for a head coach and we're an inexperienced team getting ready for comp season, that only meant one thing: bloodbath, right? When it came to the full out part of the season, all we ever heard was do it again, 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 right? We just had to keep going. And I don't know leading up to competition that we ever hit a full out. I don't know. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't, but it doesn't, I don't feel like we ever did. Anyway, looking back at my evolution into a leader, ever since the talk we had at camp, right? The team knew if I called the huddle, it mattered because I'm a super chill guy. Generally speaking, I'm chilling. Like we could be missing stunts at practice or we could not be, whatever. But if I'm not chilling, that meant something was really up, right? So my team kind of understood that vibe. And so we get to nationals, which in hindsight, it's not NCAA, right? It's a COA All-Star Nationals in Kansas City, which is like 2.5 hours from us, 3 hours. So it's nothing major, but in that moment, like we don't know anything different. It was prime time for us. So we were fortunate enough to go up the night before the competition, and everyone is excited. We had no idea where our coach was. Again, whatever, not our business. But fine, we decided to go see the town and just move around. We're 20-year-olds, we're excited, we're in this big city, and we're just walking through the streets, just finally excited we get to compete for once. I lasted about 15 minutes. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I told the team, I'm going back to the room, just make sure that we're all back in our rooms by 10 o'clock. And I went to sleep. And even to this day, I always go to sleep early before a big day. I get so paranoid about how much energy I'm going to need to expense that I try to get as much sleep as I can the night before, which is not even how energy works, right? Like that's not, we know scientifically, and I know scientifically that's not how it works, but my superstition still makes me do that. So it's comp day. We're up. Girls are doing hair and makeup. We jamming. We're in a hotel. It's 6 a.m. Music blaring. Super obnoxious, right? But we're kids and we're just excited. Like we're so excited to do this thing. And so we finally get up to the venue. And I don't know, this is All-Star. You've never done All-Star, but typically it's like level 1s and 2s on Saturdays. It was at 10 a.m. on a Saturday and it had the college team competing. But whatever. We don't even know who we're competing against. But we finally get there and we finally figure out who we're competing against. So in our division was Central Christian College, which is like right down the street from us. And then it's Coffeyville Community College. No big deal, no problem, except for Coffeyville just took 8th at UCA in January. So like this is April, Mayish, and they just competed in January and took 8th. Now everyone is rattled, everyone's nervous, all those things. So guess what I did? You guessed it. I called the huddle right away. I went to a speech on how we're grown, just like Coffeyville is grown. I elaborated on how what they did in the past had nothing to do with today and told them that if Coffeyville wanted to beat us, we were going to make them beat us, right? Like we weren't just going to lay down. So we'll do our jobs and let the chips fall where they lay or where they lie, whatever that word is. So that was close. That was a close one, right? But I think I got everybody back on track in the right frame of mind. All for naught, though, because as soon as Coffeyville hit the mat, not only were they good, they were so better. They get to that first warm-up set, and it's hand tuck, hand Arabian, hand full. I'm like, okay, this is over. It's over. We don't have a chance. Johnny, our best tumbler, he only had a layout. The rest of the men on the team, which is like 6 other men, we only had standing tucks. So I knew we were cooked. We didn't stand a chance. I said a quick prayer, and we took the mat. I instantly regretted it. I should have said 2 prayers. One for Coffeyville and then one for the lights. We'd never competed, right? So I didn't know that the lights in an all-star competition, like they're up there and they were going to be that bright. I had no clue. And to make it worse, the lights were right at toss extension level. Do you know how I know they were at toss extension level? You guessed it. Our first stunt, quick toss to the top. So now I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to miss the shoes are white, the light is white. It was a mess. I was like, I already knew before anything started that we were gonna start off with 5 drop stunts. We didn't have to worry about Coffeyville. We were gonna do our job to begin with. So the music starts, ding, ding. And as soon as the bell sounded for the music, that's the last time I had any thoughts towards the routine. Like I had just spent the last 12 weeks focusing on the routine and I never thought about it again. From then on, my procedural memory, roundhouse kicked my fears, my doubts, my anxiety,
Mhm.
and I just coasted. Everything, everything I preached about for the last 6 weeks. Things like be present, take one skill at a time, focus on your counts. I did none of that. Zero, zero, zero. It felt like I was floating over myself, watching my team and myself compete. It was the weirdest feeling. I saw my coach fist pumping at the edge of the mat. She's hype. I saw Johnny, he was killing his jumps. I'm like, Johnny, I've never seen you jump like that, but I've also never watched it, right? I saw we have little Michelle. She's a running tumbler. She's killing running tumbling, and we're in running tumbling. So I'm probably tumbling, watching Michelle tumble, and I'm like, wow, she's doing such a great job. I'm not putting any conscious effort into anything about this routine. I did have a few cues. Thank you for teaching me that word, by the way. I've never heard it, but I love it. So like when me and Kenzie cross center, I would remind her to breathe. And I had been doing this so long that it was part of the routine now. Like on three, we cross, breathe. She could breathe. She could go do her thing. But besides that, all I remember was being like super impressed with everyone's performance. Like everybody just showed out. And I remember thinking, wow, this has to be the most perfect routine in the history of performances. All we had left was the dance. I just had to jinx it, right? I just had to jinx it.
Oh,
So Summer, our number one main base, and Michelle, which our smallest flyer on the team, were crossing center and collided. Number one main base collides with number one flyer. The strongest, most muscular woman on our team collides with our number one smallest person voted most likely to be mistaken for a fifth grader, right? So and Summer didn't even notice. Like she got to her spot. She knew where she needed to be. And Michelle, like, oh man, it felt like she fell for 32 minutes. I'm in front of them. I'm just watching this happen in front of me, and my time stopped. My heart is falling, sinking, because I'm watching the routine. Like I'm not
yeah.
competing at this point. I'm watching them, and I'm like, this perfect routine is about to get derailed in deductions because of not even a skill, right? So she's
Right.
twisting and twisting and twisting, and then she steps. And somehow, I don't know how, she finds her balance and avoids falling and hits her T for the dance on one. I'm hysterical at this point. Like I might be borderline belligerent. I'm like dancing for Jesus at this point because that was the miracle. We came off that mat and I immediately take off sprinting. Like if you ever been to those large venues, there's a closet every 100 feet, and I'm in that arena, in that closet, crying, bawling my eyes out, right? Like a baby, because look at my team. Like, look at what we put together. We had no competition experience. We didn't get to compete last season. We have a shaky coach at best, and yet we still found a way to perform like that. I was so proud of my team. And that was the day I decided I could not be done with cheer, right? If an unathletic, nerdy kid like me could find a team that not only wanted him on the team, but then saw him fit to lead that team, if the team could do all of that for me, I thought it was my duty to help others find their purpose and their place within this sport. And that was the beginning of Coach Zoe.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I mean
yeah,
it.
and I completely know what you mean. I remember my first time on competition mat because although I cheered in high school, we didn't compete, and it was 3 years into my college, maybe two, well, 3 years into my college career before we competed, and we, if you totally feel out of body, and like I crashed and I flipped early out of a torch flip,
Yeah.
and my partner moved on his count, but I was still in the air. And I remember looking like, where did he go? Like, and then I just hit the ground and I was like, I gotta go.
Yeah, yeah, we gotta
Um,
go.
but it's yeah. uh, so did you do gymnastics beforehand? You were
No,
had,
I am my father is a doctor. My
yeah,
mom has her master's in education. So before I even got to high school, I barely ever picked up a ball. I'm a nerd at my heart. It wasn't until I got to high school that I even started playing football. And I skipped my sophomore year of high school. So I'm a 16-year-old, or no, not 16. I'm a 14. I don't know. I skipped that sophomore year. So
yeah.
by the time I graduated high school, I was 16 years old. So I was super
So
undersized for sports.
yeah.
Yep.
So let's jump. Well, so you own Distal Point and you started Distal Point tumbling.
I did.
Tell me just a quick story about how that came about and what does that look like, and then we're gonna dive into more about tumbling.
Okay. Yeah. Um, I don't really do quick stories, so cut me off or
Okay.
speed me up whenever
Yeah.
you need me, right? But excuse me, I started off in college. As soon as I left competition, I figured out how I could get involved. So I went to grad school and cheered. And while I was in grad school, my coach saw that I had an affinity for coaching and that I wanted to get into this life. So he set me up with a local dance company that was looking for a tumbling coach. And because of my involvement, she ended up hiring me to coach an all-star gym. She opened an all-star gym. I was her coach, and we were running the team or whatever. And then December 14th, 2014, I remember the date, she sends me a text, says the lights are off, the water's off. If you want, the company is yours. So now I'm inheriting an all-star gym at like 23 years old. I have no business running a gym, right? And so that crashes and burn. Like we do a great job of competing and coaching and doing all the cheer stuff. At least we do a great job of learning, right? We
Yeah.
can't do great at our first thing of anything, but I was always persistent about getting better and whatever. But I had no idea about business. So that fails and I'm taking on other jobs as college coaches. So I'm coaching at the local college while I'm running this all-star gym and the all-star gym fails. The college fires me because I'm putting all this energy into my all-star gym, and then I have nothing now, right? So I was a college cheer coach and I did have my all-star gym, and now I have nothing. So then I'm working at a convenience store when the college that I graduated from, the college that I won nationals with, they're like, yo, we need a coach, we want you. Praise the Lord, I'm there, right? And I love it because I always wanted to be the head coach of that team. I'm like, I can do this team the service that none of the other coaches could. In college cheer and in cheer in general, there's just not a lot of money for coaches. So it's a revolving door. I know at Kansas Wesleyan here in the city that I live, they've had a new cheer coach every year, right? And so I was like, I'm going to be here. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to do what I do. And my first year, I do incredible. But as I'm recruiting and I'm diving all in into this project, I'm realizing that the school doesn't necessarily care about the athletes the way I do, right? Like it's a private institution, so tuition is through the roof. 25,000, 30,000, like it's something ridiculous. But we're not, if you or me pay for a $25,000 a year mastermind program, that's elite level service we're getting, right?
Right.
But these kids are paying $25,000 for education, and they don't know if they're gonna have a room. They don't know if they're gonna get into classes. They don't. They. It's a small institution, so they are. People are incentivized to come for whatever sport they're playing, but then the education comes first, which makes sense, right? It makes sense when you're saying it out loud. Of course, the education comes first, but none of the educators are the reason why these athletes are here. So I just didn't like the system. I didn't like the school. I didn't like that they were treating my athletes like this. Like I'm talking to their parents, like I'm going to be protecting them and I'm in charge of them. I'm the steward of their next 4 years. But the school, so I got very disenfranchised. And I was like, if I was going to run another business, and not drive my wife crazy,
Yeah.
what would I do? How would I do it? And I thought of Amazon, and I was like, the great thing about Amazon is they're gonna get everything you need to you. You don't have to leave your house. And I was like, okay, well, what if I could do that with tumbling? What if I could hit up all these small towns in the area and bring tumbling to them? Then they don't have to travel 30, 45, 60 minutes to do a 1 hour tumbling lesson when they have 3 or 4 kids. It just doesn't make sense to go an hour away, sit for an hour, drive back an hour, and then you have to still go make dinner and still do the rest of the things and go see your family. Like that's a whole evening. So I made Distal Point Tumbling. I reached out to a bunch of different communities like, hey, I will come to your community, coach tumbling. All I need is a facility, half a basketball court, and we rock it, right? And so I bought equipment and I found some coaches at the local university, Kansas Wesleyan, and we just went. This last year was amazing. We had 7 communities that we were serving. We served up to at one point 255 athletes, praise the Lord. And we had 0 tumbling led incidences. We did have a girl who had a problem with seizures, but like we can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
But I did hire an extra coach to be there if she were to ever run into a problem. But it was such an amazing opportunity, like 255 athletes, 0 injuries. You don't hear about that,
Yeah.
right? So it's just been an overall amazing opportunity that I didn't know was gonna work so well, to be honest. I was expecting more people to tell me no. I was expecting to have less people sign up. It just
Yeah.
most people I've ever helped in a season. And I can't wait to see how this continues to grow.
Awesome. That is incredible because just inherent in nature, tumbling has an inherent risk for injury, as does every sport. But like to not have to have 0 outside injury, like that's awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah. Hype.
Let's talk about uh when do you start with kids, or when is it okay time for kids to start tumbling or start tumbling skills, like or I take issue a little bit with I think kids are starting at 3 years old now
Mhm.
for getting into cheer gyms, and while I think the court and gymnastics and all that stuff, and I think the coordination and all that is good, and I think it's important to get kids in playing and doing tumbling skills. But when is it okay to? What age should people start focusing on tumbling and getting more into tumbling? And is there an age range that is too early and too late, in your opinion?
I'm not gonna lie, you asked like 4 different questions, and I know that because
So
I have a thing about answering questions. So I'm like,
that's
wait,
a
which one am I answering?
basically let like the
Got you.
what age is it okay to start tumbling? And
No, for sure.
yeah,
I think I used to think 3 years old was a good age to start tumbling. Now I think 18 months is a great time to start tumbling. I have a parent in me class. Sometimes it's known as a mommy and me class, but dads
yeah,
do really well in that class. So I have a parent in me class that I had at 3, but I kind of wish I could move it down. So I think I'm gonna move it down to 18 months. Um, I think to talk about your issue with starting too early, I think the problem is when parents have too high of an expectation on what this is, right? I think that again, we should have these kids moving, working on their coordination, working on their socializing. Like, how do I take instruction, especially because I'm a man, right? So majority of the time, they're not taking instruction from men unless it's their parents. So how do we take instruction and how do we move safely, all those things. I think 18 months 2 years is great. I think the problem is when parents want their kids to have a specific skill by a certain age. My kid is 4 years old, she needs her back handspring or she needs her back walkover for whatever. That to me is a little excessive. Nothing about my gym is competitive. We don't have any competitive aspects in what we do. This is all recreational, introductory, let's have fun tumbling, which makes it a lot easier to not have any injuries. I'm not gonna lie,
yeah,
it's not an all-star gym where we have expectations, but that's what I like. I'd much rather have less injuries and not compete than have a bunch of injuries and compete. Like, I think when it comes to getting into tumbling, right? When should kids and parents start focus on the more not competitive, but more focused aspect of tumbling? I think 7 years old.
yeah,
There's some 6 year olds that were successful this year, and I'm happy for them. But I think we're asking a lot of them to like a lot from a 6 year old to sit down and focus,
yeah,
especially a 6 year old boy. Um, they just be running around, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. Sometimes parents, especially dads, get a little bit upset when they see their 6 year old boy running around, but they're 6. Like, what do you want from them? Yeah, I think that does that answer your question?
yeah.
Okay.
And so at 18 months, you're not having them do uh like running, tumbling
Running,
tasks. You're
tumbling.
you're starting to
Oh,
build skill. You're starting
we're
to build
doing
skills. Like
yeah,
you're
we're
like,
doing body positions and I like to call it animal walks. Animal
yeah,
walks is my version of conditioning without saying conditioning. It makes it
Yeah,
fun. So we're doing bear crawls and camel walks and just things that will build those muscles up without them knowing. We just make it
yeah,
a game.
yeah,
No, I'm not doing nothing serious is happening at 18 months. Nothing serious is happening at 3 years old. Nothing serious
yeah.
is happening before 5. At 5, I have my mini ninja and my mini intro class, mini tumbling 100. I don't know what it is. I think it's my intro class. I have my intro class at 5,
Yeah.
and that's when I'll start teaching body positions as far as hollow body and arch body, and just kind of giving them what it is that we're doing. And then everyone wants to do a cartwheel and everyone wants to do a handstand around here, so I kind of show them how to do it correctly and safely. But no, before 5, I'm not doing anything serious.
And that, so I can get on board with that. The issue I have is like you expect your 3-year-old to be focused and in line and you know doing. I mean, uh, I, I don't know the age ranges for what the normal skill level is because I got you should crawl, you should roll, you should crawl, you should transition up into kneeling, and then you should walk, and then you should run, and then you should climb stairs, and that all like that's like a 18 month to 2 years old range. But so I can get on board with like the the animal crawls and the conditioning and the pulling them together and like
Yeah.
following instruction because and socialization. I think that's huge, because that all of that, those are skills that go along with cheer and gymnastics, that if you start to build that early, that builds that foundation that we always talk about to get you going farther.
Yeah.
A question that and I know I've seen you on Reddit, and seen a couple you got some awesome
Oh, you see
answers
me
out
on
there.
Reddit?
I
I
have.
love
I
that.
have. And sometimes kids ask like, I'm a high schooler. Is that too old to start tumbling?
Yeah.
Is there an age range that's too old?
Um, I don't think so. I think traditionally, if I'm gonna be honest, like I like to answer questions for what the question is. 50 was kind of challenging. I had one person who wanted to learn how to do a back tuck at 50. That was kind of a challenge. I was scared about their knees and their hamstrings. But even then, she was actually pretty successful. I think in the scope of what we're generally talking about is like college cheerleading, right? I've taught my best tumblers at 22 years old. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions of, oh, I didn't start when I was 6, so I'm never going to learn how to tumble. And it's like, if you don't want to learn how to tumble, then say that. But if you want to learn how to tumble, we can get you there. Will it be difficult? Yeah, but it's difficult at 6 too. It's difficult
Right.
at 8. It's always hard. It's just a different type of hard. And I think the problem with trying to learn how to tumble at 16 and 18 is you feel so behind and you feel so embarrassed. But it's super possible. I've done it. My best friend, I coached her when she was in college, and she was told she'd never be able to learn how to tumble. She didn't have any of the coordination, and by her senior year, she was last pass on college mat. So animal
That's a
beast, she made it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you don't give up. Keep after it. If it's something that you want, you can get at. You can do it. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you
it,
want to learn, right? But
yeah, yeah,
we just get scared of being embarrassed. Like people say they're scared of getting hurt, but that's not really it. Because we get
right.
hurt walking down the stairs. We're scared of embarrassing ourselves because we feel like this is something we should have. And I have the same problem. Like I'm an expert at coaching tumbling. I suck at coaching aerials. So not only is it do I suck at it, but then I suck at learning how to coach aerials because every time I'm sitting down trying to read through the documentation and the journals, it's like I should already know this, right? And so it's that feeling of like being behind that keeps us from moving forward. But if we can just humble ourselves and know it's okay,
Yeah,
we all start somewhere and we are where we are. We can't change that, and just be okay with being bad at it for as long as it takes, because you will be bad at it.
yep. And if you learn the skills, like Coach Zoe was talking about, maybe you start with crawling and bear crawling and progress it. But once you have that body control and body awareness, the rest of it gets
Yeah,
easy. Yeah.
absolutely.
Do you so when you travel to gyms, now,
Yeah.
or do you have space that you, or both?
Yes, both.
Yeah,
So I
both.
have one, oh, I forgot the name, but I have like one home location in
Yeah.
Hillsborough, Kansas. And then we have satellite locations all over central and north central Kansas. And I
And
guess mid central Kansas. All over.
so are you still going to private gyms or like high school gyms or like on site? My question is leading to equipment. Like, do you take your equipment with you or
Yeah, yeah. So
and
we have mobile and portable equipment. We have air tracks and cheese mats and panel mats. And because what we're doing is not available in the communities that we serve, no one is needing more than that. No one is
yeah,
working on their double fulls or even layouts is not something that we deal with. We're working on round off spring, standing tug, standing back handsprings, and so we can fit all of that into a car, drive down, coach our class, and it's inflatable.
yeah.
Deflate everything, put it back in the car, and then we're on to the next town.
That so how how does that transition into a competition floor or and are you noticing is there differences between the surface that you're on and helping them to transition onto either a dead mat or a spring floor?
I think you misunderstand the people that I'm serving, right?
Okay,
None of the people that I'm serving are doing all star. None of the people that
okay,
serving are necessarily on cheer squads that
okay.
compete.
Yeah,
Kansas in general isn't a highly competitive state when it comes to cheer. We do compete game in October. Started maybe 3 years, so that's still pretty new. Uh, as far as tumbling, isn't that's something that's required by Kansas high school teams for the most part. But there are obviously outliers everywhere you go, our bigger cities. But no, the people that we serve again don't have the opportunity to learn tumbling, and
yeah,
so they're not competing tumbling, they're not performing tumbling. And if they do perform tumbling, they all do well because like I just said this yesterday, but we were talking about flyers and how I'd much rather have a flyer that's a little bit heavier, a little bit weighs a little bit more, but understands the the gravity of being a flyer and would sell their left pinky toe to be a flyer. And so they do everything they can to stay tight in the air, than have someone who's maybe smaller, prototypical, archetypical flyer, but they take that for granted. And so they don't put the effort that they need to put in the air. It's the same thing. These athletes, they know that they're not going to get this instruction anywhere else. They know that they've been dying to have this instruction. So whether or not they're necessarily comfortable about tumbling on a different surface, they're going to throw it because they were so grateful to get the information and the opportunity, right? And so it's actually like, it actually prepares them because they're like, no, this is what I've been practicing. I've been waiting 12 years to learn how to tumble. Now I've
yeah,
spent this year learning how to tumble. I'm going to go tumble on any surface that I can. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets them out of their head a little bit and thinking that there's a that they can only do it on that surface because they've had that training and just consist. Yeah. Um. So do you find um mechanically is there what's the best surface or the worst surface to tumble on? So and that's kind of I don't like you know I think the best and the worst surface is the is depends on how your technique is kind of, but
Right.
because if you can if you um I'll leave that. What's the best
No,
and the worst surface to tumble on?
so I mean, if you're talking about like within regulation, so we're talking about like dead mat, hardwood surfaces, spring floor, grass. Like if we're just gonna put those four as the four places.
Yeah,
I don't like tumbling on grass necessarily. It's just so hard to make sure that there's no potholes anywhere, right?
yeah,
I love turf. Turf is cool. Turf is probably scientifically the most dangerous place to tumble because it's not forgiving. Like,
yeah,
you see a lot of ACL tears with, oh, you're PT. So you probably see a
yeah,
lot of football players who have a
yeah,
lot of knee injuries
Yep.
playing on turf. So turf scientifically, if you look at the data, will probably be the worst place to tumble. Um, Again, we are not doing. I don't serve like people who are doing double fulls and fulls, full to fulls, whip fulls, things like that. So we don't have a lot of those issues. Like a surface is a surface for us. I do have a lot of people who are nervous about tumbling on a hardwood court.
Yeah.
And that's because we don't have enough data, right? We don't see people tumbling on hardwood courts where we're at, and we don't do it a lot. But I tumbled on a hardwood court, and so I let the athletes know it's actually more buoyant than you think it would be. I can't tell you why. I don't know why it's so bouncy, but it bounces
Yeah.
pretty well. And I think it actually bounces better than a dead mat because the foam has absorption to it. Wood doesn't. So whatever energy you put into the surface is going to propel right back out. But it's just sometimes we make things harder, not because it's harder to do, but because the consequences of not doing it correctly are more severe, right? It's
Yeah.
like a back tuck isn't necessarily any harder for a man. Well, no, let me make sure all things ceteris paribus, right? Like if you have the strength and conditioning to do a back tuck and the strength and conditioning and flexibility to do a back handspring, it's not necessarily any harder. It's just that the consequences for failure in a back tuck are a lot worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish that I had I wish that I had that mindset and being able to tell my kids that when I was coaching and going from we didn't well in the fall we would practice on a dead mat. In the winter we had a gymnastics team in the high school and they would practice on a spring floor, and then they'd go from there to the basketball court. And it was always, that first run was always I can't do this
Oh,
on here. I
geez.
can't do this on here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But really like, and they would eventually get that. The ones that had it solid would eventually get that, um, and be able to just go throw it and do it. They just had to kind of get through. But like, I didn't even think about the surface being more forgiving on the wood
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and
um,
the part of that's so crazy is you never think about, at least for me when I started off being a coach, and again I'm a nerd, right? And so when I go to school and I want to get straight A's, all I have to do is study, read the
yeah,
text, and then
yeah,
that's the information. And so when I was a coach, I was the same thing. I was like, if I just read on how to the mechanics of a handstand and the mechanics of a back handspring and the mechanics of a fold down, and if I just know the information, then I can tell my athletes the information and then they can do it. But that's not even the fight. The
right,
fight is giving my athletes the confidence and the permission to do it the way I'm asking to. Like that's half of my job, maybe even more. So I wish somebody would have told me that when I was like, hey, don't
yeah,
worry so much on the technical aspect because you still got to sell it. Whatever
yeah,
you know, you still got to go sell it. Yeah.
right, right. Um, but you do a lot of work on tumble track, and I've seen them online, and I've seen videos of people tumbling online, on them. I have someone that I'm currently working with so I've never seen one in person.
Okay.
But my assumption is it's a softer surface. It's like a little bit more giving and doesn't have, especially if it loses any air. Like I'm thinking of a lake trampoline or a lake, that's like an air filled, and
Yes,
like when it
like
just
an air
loses that little
bladder.
bit of air, it gets a little bit more squishy. And so I have somebody that's working on that, and there's some foot issues that she has some foot issues. And on the one hand, I think that's a great surface because it's softer for you to land on and it's not going to be as much impact
Okay.
as, a harder surface. But then on the other hand, I'm like, man, your foot has to work really hard to stabilize. Do you like, so just talk to me about the tumble track. Like, what is
Yeah.
it like, and how do you know, like, what's the, or the air track? What's the best surface or I guess the inflation level for them to
Girl, I do
be,
not know.
yeah,
We we turn it all the way up and make sure that we have, because I don't want there to be too much give, because
yeah,
then they have to have more control, right? Like you said,
yeah,
you take out a little bit of air, that's gonna make it more balanced. So I make it pretty stiff. That way, um, if they mess up, they're not bouncing all the way across the gym. I've never thought about the foot having to stabilize. But if I mean, yeah, that's absolutely correct. The foot does have to stabilize more, but we coach in a way, well, I hope we coach in a way where those stabilization, like we coach, here we go. I was not ready for this question, but so I
I'm
had to think.
sorry. Yeah.
No, I love it. I love your show because I feel like I'm the only nerd who coaches tumbling like this. And then I watch your show and I'm like, oh,
I
there's
know.
people like
Yeah,
this.
I know.
Awesome. Um, but we do a lot of we do all of our progressions on the tumble track, right? And so it's not stabilizing anymore doing a back handspring than it was stabilizing doing the back walkover and doing the back bend and doing the bridge up. And so because we've progressed on this surface, it's that's just the new adaptation for the foot. Now, I can see there being a problem if you are going from, the cheer floor, the dead mat to air track. That could definitely cause some issues. I don't see it because I do have some high school teams that I work with, and I haven't heard um athletes tell me that they've had foot problems, but athletes love lying to me. I don't know why. I'm like, hey, if something's up, please let me know, and they never tell me. But
Yeah.
parents haven't told me they've had any foot injuries. Um, so I don't
And
know
this
that's
did
a
this
concern.
this injury didn't happen on the air track. It was a different surface that the injury happened on. It's just in helping her to get back into tumbling and the intensity of it, like and progressing with it. I'm like, I don't, is that the best surface? And on the one hand, I think yes. And the other hand,
Right.
I'm like, I'm not so sure. So that's yeah.
It, to me, and I don't know how nerdy you want to get. I guess it really matters on like the placement of the injury because if we're talking like plantar flexion, right?
Yep. Yep.
I don't even know that I don't know that word that well. But if we're
Yep.
talking
That's
about the
pointing.
ball of the foot, right? If
Yep.
we're talking about the
Yep.
ball of the foot, then it might be an issue with the tumble track, the air tracks. But if we're talking like ankle, I think that it's going to be a much better. It's a lot easier to heal your ankle on a air track, tumble track than with the ball of your foot. I don't know those words exactly. I
You did
tried.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, you did good. Um, and I think maybe us nerds are taking over cheerleading now, so that's great.
But yeah, I
That's
know. I
perfect.
love you had Kelvin Lamb on your show, and I was like, I
Yeah,
love Kelvin. Like,
yeah,
I coach cheer, and I'm like a cheer expert where I'm from, and I am. I'm really good, but like he's super good at coaching. Like the way
yeah,
he coaches stunts is how I coach tumbling. Is how I see
yeah,
myself. And so I watch him, and I'm like, yep, that's
yeah,
me. Yeah. So
yeah,
yeah, thank you so much for this
yeah.
show.
Yeah, I know I love his cues and his yeah. So you touched a little bit on how and why you got into this in your intro. What's your mission and why do you continue to do this? And a couple of times have said, you're going out into to communities that is underserved and needs it. So what pushes you forward and why?
So, what pushes me forward is that I genuinely feel like cheer saved my life as far as just the direction and the trajectory. I'm all over the place, but and the ability to build my confidence and see myself for who I should see myself as. And so my goal is to make cheerleading and gymnastics accessible for everybody in the country, right? Whether they want to do it or not, that's fine, but I think with this distal point model, at least they have the option, right? You don't have to order from Amazon. But if you want something from Amazon, they'll get it to you. That's what I want with tumbling and gymnastics. I coached college for almost 10 years and every year I get a new batch of athletes and somebody's like, man, I would be so much better at tumbling if my mom would have put me in when I was 6, but we didn't have any in our town. And it's like I wanna solve that problem. Like I want it to be you shouldn't have to drive more than 30 minutes for tumbling. I just need to figure out how to keep expanding.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
awesome. I think I love what you're doing and bringing that to people that need it. So,
Yeah.
and now you're doing some online
Yeah,
instruction
yeah, yeah,
also.
yeah. So the mission is to make cheerleading and gymnastics accessible to everyone. And if I help the coaches, then that's gonna help them help everyone, right? And so now I coach tumbling and I'm really good at it. So I was like, you know what? Let me help other coaches. And so I started my Coach Zoe cheer coaching success brand where I just help all coaches with this thing called cheerleading. But I like to specialize in high school coaches, especially in my area, because like I promise you, I've watched almost every show, right? Kelvin is like, um, a lot of times these coaches are just coaching these high school teams because their daughter's on the team, and he hit it right on the head. And so they don't necessarily know anything about cheerleading. They don't know anything about game day except for what they've seen. And so I want to be that resource. How do we coach jumps? Especially so it's not so boring and so painful. What is
Yeah.
the right warm up? What do we do about wrist stretching? I learned so I had a whole wrist stretching regimen before I watched your show, and now I kind of want to throw it away because of that specialist that you had, and I was like, okay, well, I need to change that all around, right? But I kind of want to be that resource for all the cheer coaches so that they can we can move forward and stop with the, oh, you almost have that stunt, just do it again. Oh, you almost have your back handspring, just do it again. Like it's the hard-headed method, and if and they're doing their best, right? It's not like they don't care, they just don't know. So if I could help them bridge that gap from what they are trying to accomplish from what they don't know, then we're going to be closer to making cheerleading and gymnastics accessible to everyone in the country.
Love
Yeah.
it. I love it. Keep going, and yeah, creating a mission. It's perfect. So what's next on your what do you got coming up in the summer or shortly or like
Yeah, yeah. I am all over the place. I so I don't travel. I don't have a large demand. I don't have a large demand as far as my cheer coaching success series, right? So my demand is in tumbling. Can you come to this town to coach tumbling? Can you have a program here? And so just trying to get everything scheduled for the fall so that we can serve more communities, but serve them correctly because then I have to train coaches and make sure that they understand. Thankfully, I have my course, right? So now I have tumbling success systems, and now we can just go through the course. Before, I was trying to coach my coaches and tell them how to do it, but I would always forget something, right? Like there's
yeah.
just been 14 years of knowledge, but now I have a system and a course, so that is excellent. And right now, I'm trying to help or gather a few seniors in high school and just guide them along the way for tryouts in April and May. Just kind of, I had a lot of parents ask me, what is the recruiting process? I had one parent yesterday. I was actually at a college clinic yesterday, and she's like, how come I never see cheer coaches at the games? Like she's a cheer coach for the high school and her daughter's on the
Yeah.
cheer team. And she's like, none of the college coaches ever come up to us. I never see them at games. How do they recruit? Right. And I'm like, baby, they're not going to games. There's college combines out there, and
Yeah.
they can go see 100 athletes in 3 hours, where at a high school game, they might see 4 athletes in that same 3 hour span. And so just bridging that gap, because like she said yesterday, I have so many girls every year that would go and cheer in college if they only knew how. And so just trying to bridge that gap. And then I have a YouTube show called The Zoe Show, where I am interviewing all my favorite coaches. It was like a month or two ago, maybe three now at this point. But I was just sitting around thinking about my college coach, and I'm like, I don't know anything about him. I don't know anything besides the practices that he showed up for, all the things that he taught me. And then I thought about, wow, like I've been to weddings. I've been to some of my athletes' weddings. I've been to baby showers for some of my athletes. I've been to their graduations. I've been through all these life moments for my athletes, but my athletes don't know anything about my story, anything about my moments, right? And I was like, I'm gonna start a show where I interview all my favorite coaches, and they just tell me their story, because we all found a reason to fall in love with this sport, and I want to hear it every time. And
Yeah.
so I'm doing the Zoe show, and I'm interviewing my favorite coaches, and we're just sitting down having a conversation, kind of like this, and just talking about it.
That's awesome. That I think we were very close to our coach, but she was just, well, she was, I think she's 10 years older than me, but I mean, we always hung out. We like, it was a very different time back then, and it was allowed.
Right.
Not allowed, but it was just a thing. It was just
Right.
normal. Um, and, but like, do you know the ins and outs? And like, we forget that coaches are human, like,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and, um, I look at where the kids that same thing. I've been invited to weddings and baby showers, and it's amazing to stay in contact with them. I think that's one reason I keep doing cheer now, like, is because of that connection I had. And if we can foster that, and we can, you know, remember that coaches are human too, and and that kids are human too, and we can, I think that you're doing a, great job at bringing light to that and keeping that going. So I'm excited to see where things go, and to keep talking with you.
Yes.
How
Yes.
can everybody reach you, if they want to get in touch with you?
Okay. Facebook. Facebook. So it's not the most loved platform. I know Instagram gets a lot more burn, but again, I'm really trying to focus on high school coaches. So I thought um, that demo, we still love Facebook. So
Yeah.
find me on Facebook at Coach Zoe. The Facebook page, I guess there's about 4 profiles that say Coach Zoe, but the Coach Zoe Facebook page, it has me holding like a extension or a QB, a one or something.
Yeah.
And I try to post every week now. I was posting daily, but with these interviews
It's
and
a
the new,
lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so every week I post a new video on something cheer specific. I think this week's post was how to support the teams that we don't necessarily cheer at. So like cross country and soccer, like how do we, as cheerleaders, how do we show up for them? And so you can find me on Coach Zoe, and then email distalpointtumbling@gmail.com. But I think Facebook would be the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I look forward to hearing everything that you're doing, and I'm also going to post a link to the YouTube in the show notes,
Yes.
because I want
Yeah.
people to go check out your show.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
sent I sent a few things.
You,
Hold on.
yeah,
What did
you
I
sent everything. You're
I
good.
sent a
You
few
sent
things.
everything.
I didn't even know your form was gonna have that. I was just like, I know she asked for show note stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm usually never prepared. So I was like, let me just send her some things. Um, so I have a YouTube. It's called Distal Point. I do sell a tumbling course. So if you're looking to learn how to coach tumbling and not be so intimidated by it, because it is a little scary, tumbling success systems. I do have a book, um, Ultimate Guide for Flyers. It's actually called Cheerleading: The Ultimate Guide on Becoming an Elite Flyer, which is something that I just wrote because I was inspired, honestly. But I didn't have anybody ask me for it. I was
Yeah.
just like, to write a book, and so I have a book on some flexibility things, the difference between flexibility and stability and mobility. Um, we all think we just need to stretch our splits, and it's like that's
Yeah.
not what we're trying to do at all. So just how to go about it, and then how to translate what we're doing on the ground to doing it in the air. I just maybe a week ago finished the supplemental video. So I have videos for all the drills that I talk about, all the body positions. And then I have my personal Facebook profile, Lorenzo Araujo. I think it's actually Lorenzo Nicanor Araujo, Nicanor. If you look up Lorenzo Araujo, that's my dad. He might add you on Facebook because that's my dad, and he just loves everyone that I love.
Gotta show
Um,
our parents some love.
yeah, yeah. I have an Instagram page. My personal Instagram is Zoe the Coach. Um, you might see some tumbling stuff on there. I think I posted a little bit yesterday, but mainly it's just my sons. My sons are hilarious. They're a hoot. My wife, my beautiful vanilla goddess, she's beautiful. So I always post them on Instagram. And then the Distal Point page. I'm not sure what I'm doing with that right now, but I will be posting on that as well. So I think that. Oh, and then our YouTube page. Anything that is on our Facebook Live will show up on our YouTube page. And if you want to catch the Zoe show, that's where you can find it.
That's
Distal Point. I think it's just Distal Point on YouTube.
cool. But all of that will get posted in your, and but if you want to reach Coach Zoe, send him an email, check him out on Facebook,
Yeah,
and then
that'll be the
and
easiest way.
then follow up just to get to know him a little bit better. Thank you very much for being here. I'm psyched that have been talking. I know we met when you join my webinar,
Yeah, I
and
joined the
we've had some
webinar.
conversations.
Yeah,
And to see you face to face is nice. But to, I think I love your mission, and it's similar to mine in that I, want to help high school cheer athletes continue to love cheer forever and not just be,
yeah,
feel like they're done with it. So let's keep going and keep talking, and hopefully, we'll have you back again another time when, as we go forward and see where things are at as you continue to grow.
absolutely. I would love that.
So that's thanks for joining us today, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe it out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to. And as my friend Drew Kelleher said, you're responsible for your own vibes. So go get the day.